Hi, welcome back YouTubers to my channel of an everyday life of an Aspie. If you're with me right now, I'm Aspie. I'm all about creating mental health and awareness and sharing my life stories with Asperger's syndrome, OCD and the like, along with tips and advice along the way for your general health versus your mental health. As you can see basically, or if you can hear me right now, I'm obviously at this point of time using something new and hopefully the sound quality will be alright. So give me the thumbs up if you can hear me, because obviously I'm using something new. If you've been following me on my Facebook to what's going down, obviously, as said, I'm borrowing someone else's laptop until a later date. Hopefully I can find, another laptop of my own so I don't have to use this one if need be. But anyway, in the meantime, enough of all that. What I'm going to bring out to you today is something that I forgot to share with you all, even though, yes, I'm a bit behind in my schedule of uploads of what I want to share with you all. So hopefully you'll like this one. This one's all about autism, obsessions, and interests. Smash the like button if you're liking some of these series that I'm sharing out, be it my general excerpts that's from the past darky side of me, or some of these Autism Man series, or what have you, or even just comment them below and let me know before I continue, for anyone out there that has any special interest, what are they, or some obsessions that they have and how they go about it, and if that was becoming a right obsession to the point where they need to break free from it, what can you do about it? Because this is my uptake for you guys' interest if you want to listen in to this. So I'm hoping to educate you all today in what I know about this, because obviously, as we know, for us autistics, basically we can basically be one-minded in a way, especially there is a particular reasoning behind it all. I'm not going to put any excuses in the way, or basically some sort of, well, you may call it lame excuses or what have you, but that's not an excuse, because obviously it's a well-known fact that us autistics usually are self-absorbing kind of young person with special interests. I'm hoping to explain this better for you all, to gain a better understanding of our world better, to see it in our eyes and actually walk in our shoes, and hopefully in saying this that you'll get a better clarity and understanding of how us autistics works. And this doesn't obviously exist in autistic children as well, for these obsessions and interests, just to bear in mind. So if you see any of the signs and symptoms that represents any of these topics that I bring out to you today or in previous videos, do seek professional help for yourself or your loved one, because I don't forever condone self-harm. So let's begin this. As I said, we may need to question ourselves first and foremost, the clarification between the differentiation of obsession and a special interest. Okay, as we know, is defined as maybe a one sole focus on the one thing with little interest in anything else that comes up, or anything else in that particular child that they think. For an example, an obsession is a child wanting to talk only about trains, maybe. Another way of looking at obsession as a definition, it's the act of letting a thought or action that rule out our thoughts and actions, and saying this. An example for that, to clarify, is an obsession is when a stalker continues to follow a particular person. Now, on the other hand, however, special interest is defined from the Merrim Webster Dictionary online as personal groups seeking to influence legislative or a government policy to further often narrowly defined interests. As I said before, many autistics, as well as maybe other children, will have special interests, yet we need to question what are they, and when does it become an obsession to sound out the alarm bells that may, for the parents that may, have kids that are like this. Autistic people often have an intense passionate level of focus on certain particular things of their interest that they adore. Be it, like I said, as that classic example, a child talking obsessively about trains, or an obsession about basically they just want to stick to one thing, be it like want to solely focus on getting things perfectly done, accurate, and everything else. Be it maybe if a autistic child was or teen or adult here, say, may want to work in a lab or something that requires a full concentration and hopefully a bit of peace within us, just to work around it. In pursuit of these interests, however, Autistic people, or just some children in general maybe, often manifest real extremely sophisticated reasoning, intense focus, strong focus, and a remarkably good memory for trivial facts. This may remain true that most people on the spectrum have a tendency to get very interested in their particular subjects. This may sound harmless, however, to some of you, and a lot of the time it can be, but as again, how I said it, we need to question how far is too far of this obsession. However, there is an issue that many parents know from experience. It's one thing to have a special interest, but it's another to have a serious obsession about it. Knowing which is which and what to do about it can be the balancing acts of parenting on a child with this on a spectrum level. So therefore, like I said, hopefully this will come clear. Autistic people often have an intense and passionate level of focus on things of interest. Some have been suggested that these may be called as fixations, which are essentially arbitrary and lacking in real meaning or context. However, researchers have noted that special interest typically focuses on the mechanical, how things work, as opposed to the psychological, how people work. It's important to know, however, that the special interests are highly important and meaningful to the autistic person or someone similar to this intense hobby that they may have. Sometimes these interests are lifelong. In other cases, some may phase out to make room for another interest or obsession. In either case, there are typically only one or two interests at any given one moment of time. The interest may be linked in some way that is logical only to the autistic individual, however. In pursuit of these interests, autistic people often manifest extremely sophisticated reasoning and an intense focus, and a remarkably good memory for trivial facts, however. Hans Asperger, as you know, was the one that has actually been the clinical researcher based on the research of, autistic children with these obsessions. So he stated, or he called the young patients little professors, because he thought that his patients had as comprehensive and nuanced an understanding of their field of interest as university professors. Autistic people, however, may have little interest in things outside their special interests. In school, they may be perceived as highly intelligent underachievers, clearly capable of outperforming their peers in their field of interest. Yet persistently they are unmotivated to do regular homework assignments, sometimes even if in their areas of interest, however. These traits may lead them to become highly successful in the workforce if they can find a job relating in that field of interest, as I said before. Now you may be questioning, why are they obsessive, or why so obsessive? Exactly why special interest, obsessions, and autism tend to go hand in hand together. It's still not very well understood, though, just to bear in mind. However, if you look at the key characteristics of autism, of how we work and stuff, and the wiring of the DNA, it does make a certain amount of sense to use. To begin with, autism is associated with a rigid thinking ability. This sounds quite judgmental by me, but this is the case. But another way to say it, just to make it not sound as judgmental to you guys today, it would be to say that people with autism tend to be more of the all or nothing type of person than most people. Something is either absolutely not interesting or absolutely fascinating. This can be an oversimplification, but people with autism do tend to think in fewer shades of grey when applied to their favourite subjects. This can turn an interest into a passion or an obsession of their choice. Autism often brings with it some sensory issues. Some obsessions and special interests, though not all, are at least partly about getting relief or else pleasure from those that they love to do. This might be as simple as focusing all their attention on something to shut out the noisy and overwhelming world of theirs. But the interest might also bring sensory rewards in itself, though. A lot of children with autism get fascinated with spinning objects or lights. For instance, the sight of a fan or a set of fairy lights can be mesmerizing to those sensitive eyes of ours. One thing you may encounter as a parent is people overreacting to a special interest. It's one of the best known symptoms of autism and can sometimes be treated as a negative when in reality it's just a trait. and that can make things unnecessarily hard on your child if people try to cure them or fix them of something that isn't harming them in the process. Being knowledgeable about and interested in something can be a good thing, although it can sometimes involve difficulties and something that needs to be discussed. These difficulties only really start when an interest tips over the edge into an obsession. At that point, what may be a coping method for the complicated problems starts becoming a problem that complicates life in its own right. What is an obsession? Anyway, I have already mentioned the definition. First of all, let's talk the terms. Everyone has an interest, autism or not, but what makes it an obsession? I will recap it to you. Basically, an obsession is a form of an anxiety disorder, however, as well. It's one thing to think about something a lot, but if it's hard not to think about something else to the point where it's undermining your ability to live and enjoy yourself. That's clearly what an obsession is. It's worth drawing a distinction between obsession and obsessive compulsive disorder here, just to bear in mind, even though I've already shared some parts about obsessive compulsive disorders, which I'll link hopefully either in the description or on the I-bar above me. But I'll hopefully just brief it down to you right now. Right. OCD or obsessive compulsive disorder is another kind of anxiety disorder in which someone gets stuck on the 4-stage cycle, which are an unwanted upsetting thought intrudes. 2, they feel anxious and distressed. 3, they feel compelled to do something like washing hands, checking all the lights are off to deal with the distress. 4, they feel it temporarily, but then the thought soon returns and the cycle will begin again of what I've just shared. People with autism can have OCD, but that's not usually meant when people talk about obsessions here. Let's get this clear here, just to clarify. There's usually no compulsion to get rid of these obsessive thoughts. It's more likely that the person will want to hang on to it. If they act on it, it's because they find it rewarding them, because they want to shake that thought off. Sufferers of OCD may find the whole business painful and would generally like to stop it if they could. But a person with autism who has an obsession is generally very resolved to stick with it. Most people with autism have particular favourite subjects. Special interests can simply be like hobbies or careers, only more so someone on the spectrum can dedicate an immense amount of time to their special interest, even dedicating every free moment to it. Depending on what that special interest is, however, this could be the foundation of a career that they can begin with. A way to meet people or an isolating eccentricity. Again, that will depend on every individual on that spectrum. People with autism doesn't choose their interest based on how socially adaptable or acceptable they are, so there can be an element of choice that can affect they'll have on their own life. In the most positive cases of all those, special interests can be turned into amazing accomplishments and achievements. Famously, for instance, the autism activist that many people may have heard about, Temple Grandin, turned her interest in cattle to an honourable end. Loving animals and believing that in a meat-eating world they still deserve humane slaughterhouses. Grandin became a star consultant in the packing industry, greatly reducing animal suffering. In the less dramatic cases, however, and in extraordinary cases, like Grandin's, are the minority. An interest can sometimes be a way to make friends, but sometimes a way to lose them. If you happen to be interested in, say, a popular football team, then you'll find a lot of other people who share that interest and may be able to talk about it. Sometimes, in saying this, that they may talk it to death, though perhaps not as much as you'd like. As with a special interest, it's possible that you can talk about it all day, and most of the neurotypical people want a change of the subject after a while. On the other hand, however, if your special interest is in collecting the birth dates of everyone you have met, most people will feel that there's a limit to how much they can talk about that, which can be frustrating for both the person with autism and people they try to talk to. It's also worth noting that not all special interests and obsessions are expressed by long monologues. Some people with autism don't have the language skills to do that. After all, they can still have obsessions. For instance, they may spend all their time at home playing with their own and their parents' and run to examine the shoes of strangers when you're out and about. This can be pretty difficult if it leads to socially unacceptable behaviours that you feel, uncomfortable about. It's one thing to talk about shoes a lot, but it's quite another to grab them off people's feet on the bus or have to have a tantrum if you try to move them along after 5 minutes gazing into the shop window. Therefore, again, what is an obsession? If it's something it's starting to get excessive, does that make it an obsession? That can be a complicated question to answer, but I'm here to try and address this to you, especially if your child is so young. Some difficult behaviours may be caused by immaturity. A 4-year-old with autism is still only 4 years old overall, and younger children have less self-control than the older ones. If you're trying to determine whether someone's reached the obsessive point, there are some useful questions maybe you can ask yourself. Can they stop the behaviour independently? Here are some questions to think about right now. Do they seem unhappy while they're doing it, like they aren't actually enjoying it, or does it seem like they try not to do it but they can stop themselves? 2, is it causing some serious problems for other people? For example, are they inconveniencing strangers on the street? Is it making things miserable for siblings? Is family life being taken over? 3, is it undermining the ability to learn? For example, are they unable to concentrate on anything else at school? 4, is it limiting the ability to make friends or meet new people? This can be a tricky one, as autism tends to impair the social skills anyway, even without the obsessions that are in place. But then again, it can make it harder. 5, is it turning into a stim? That is, have they stopped engaging with it as an interest instead of using it as a repetition for repetition's sake? I have already talked about stimming, so again, I'll link it in the description of the playlist versus putting it in the iBar. It's one thing if a child is into drumming, say, but if they want to do nothing but hit the same part with the same stick the same way all day, that's no longer an interest but a stim. A bit of stimming is fine in moderation. It's a way to relax, but if it gets too compulsive, then that can also become an issue. If you're starting to wonder, the real thing to do is to seek out professionals such as psychologists. Special interests are fine, but obsessions are a problem. It is a good idea to help when you need it, or even when they need it. But when the suffering of an obsession outweighs the pleasure, it may be time to do something and act on it. That something may not be to remove the child interest at all. That's neither a realistic nor a humane goal, but you will all benefit if you can get the problematic behaviours back within reasonable bounds and reduce the anxiety levels that go with this. So here's some tips about how to go about this, about managing the special interests / obsessions. However, so I'll share these with you now, hopefully, if we've got enough time. We say special interests are fine, but that doesn't mean they don't bring complications into life, right? The thing is to do is create a constructive relationship with them as possible. So real life examples of special interests. There was a autistic writer by the name of Miss Luna Rose, which is called Finding Motivation. She explains to parents by encouraging her special interest in writing as a child. Now she writes tutorials about fiction and other articles online, basically. Another one you could save yourself is aircraft and transportation may fascinate many autistic people, particularly trains and all rail transport. 2, pets can become a fixation for autistic people. They are always around the house and do not talk or present a socially complex partner, though, however. Dogs in particular can have a calming influence on autistics and are commonly used as surface animals for this purpose. Certain dolls may become extremely close to an autistic person, for example, one that looks like them or a talking doll because it appears to interact with them, thus providing low-stress interaction that they may not be able to have with others. Another one is computer games can become very addictive to the autistic person. They provide visual stimulation, one is the need for social interaction. In many cases, multiplayer games such as Club Penguin, Barbie.com, or Stardoll provide a non-intimidating way to socialize in world while playing the game. Another one is obviously some other games, Minecraft, or if they're older and they're teens and adults, some may like fighting games, first persons. Fantasy things such as fairies, unicorns, and so on are often a fixation. Dan Aykroyd stated that his special interest in ghosts and law enforcement inspired him to create the movie Ghostbusters. And also he's autistic, just to bear in mind. Creative interests such as writing, music, and art are also common. Some autistic people show some remarkable artistic skill from a very young age. Matt Savage is one of these classic examples of the creative prodigy. Social issues may be attractive for autistic people due to a strong sense of morality and social responsibility. They may present some complex and nuanced arguments against racism, transmisogyny, world hunger, ableism, and the list goes on. Some of these people go on to be prominent activists such as RNEM and Phil Goulas. Card sports facts such as baseball, football cards, and school board information can influence or attract autistic interest. It becomes a way to interact with people their competitive interest, but not in an intimidating social way. Autism and autism rights may attract autistic people who look first to understand themselves and to help others. Phil Goulas is that clear example again for this. Strange things in a specific matter such as turtles, mushrooms, African dictators, the Holocaust, graffiti, and so on can also attract autistic interest. It should be noted, though, however, that many of these interests also come in with the neurotypicals. The difference lies between the intensity of the interest, however. Special interest and social skills. As we know, special interest talk can help the loved ones bond with the autistic person and get a better sense of the autistic person's perspective. Loved ones can search for the ways to enjoy special interests. For example, if the daughter loves cats and the father likes to draw, maybe they both can draw together, of cats. The combination of social problems and intense interest can lead to unusual social behaviours, however, such as launching into a lengthy monologue without realising that the other person is disinterested. The autistic person may be baffled when told that this is inappropriate. As they age, they will become better at handling certain social interactions and situations. Sometimes parents, after reading literature from Autism Speaks or some other similar autism groups, will try to stop the child from talking about their interests at all. This can be harmful to the child's psyche. The message that they get is that nobody cares about what interests them. Another one is adapting. It's important for autistic people to learn to understand when the other party is interested, to talk about the interest a bit, but allow the conversation subject to shift depending on what the other person wants, and to keep it reciprocal. Autistic people should also be taught when a monologue is a good thing. Sometimes other people will ask about the interest in hopes of learning more, and those people will encourage the monologue to continue. In that case, the autistic person can be taught to recognize listening body language and attempts to keep the monologue going. Encouraging special interest. As I said before, Dan Aykroyd is the writer of Ghostbusters, whose special interest includes the ghost and law enforcement. Parents are encouraged to support their child's interests. While special interests may seem strange or random to the outsiders on the outside world, they are incredibly meaningful to the child. They provide a source of recreation, allowing the child to develop a competence in certain areas, providing a safe haven during the times of stress, which assists them in avoiding meltdowns and sensory overloads and improving their self-esteem. Here are the ways to encourage and support the child in their special interests. Keep things calm by 1. Special interests are most likely to get obsessional when your son or daughter is anxious. All the things you do to support them, trying to make stressful events feel predictable and safe, encouraging their communication skills so they don't get too frustrated with you. Trying to protect them from sensory overload, making sure that they don't get bullied at school will hopefully make them feel more comfortable in general. And keep special interest to a level of something they do for fun rather than something that they can't stop. Set some limits. Having to listen to your son or daughter to talk about their favourite subjects to death all the time can be a bit stressful for parents. However much you love your child, you don't necessarily love their favourite subject. And bluntly, you probably will love it even less after you've heard it all about the time of years. There are areas where different neurological needs can be at odds, however. Parents can't help feeling stressed or bored any more than the son or daughter can't help wanting to talk about something a lot. As with any family, compromise is probably the best solution. For example, some families set a rule that their son or daughter can talk about their special interest for, say, 3 times a day for a maximum of 20 minutes at a time. The same time can be done if the special interest involves objects. You could try to take 40 toy trains out with you every time you go to the shops, but what you do is the rule that you can say 3. You may need to use visual supports to help communicate the message, and might have to weather some of the tantrums, especially from a younger child, while you establish the rule. But once it's integrated as part of the routine, it should hopefully become more manageable for you. Teach social limits early. Introducing a child with autism to new activities can be very difficult, but using their special interest can actually give you a jumping start off point. Teaching a child with autism what is and isn't socially acceptable behaviour can be extremely difficult as well, and may always be a work in progress. Here, however, some basics such as don't grab strangers, coats, buttons are going to be important. Don't touch people's bodies, clothes, or possessions without permission. Don't follow or stare at people. Don't go into marked off areas such as behind the syrup counters without permission. Obsessions and vaccinations are one of the things most likely to override the social rules that you have with your child. Otherwise, no one, but keep working on it and you'll probably save the trouble later. Finding books and toys that are related to that interest, talking with the child about that interest, before birthdays, informing relatives of party goals about the child's special interest so the gift will be more meaningful for the child. Learning activities that are related to the internet, helping the autistic join a club to special interests, also provides opportunities to socialize in a less intimidating setting. Special interests may someday turn into a successful career or hobby, as I mentioned before. Well, this quickly ends the special interests and obsessions in autistic children and other children in general. Give me a like, thumbs up for thought, comment below. Feel free to share these videos around to family and friends. Feel free to basically follow me on my social media sites. If you want to know more about what I get up to, follow me on my social media sites, as well as if you want to be part of my YouTube family, feel free to subscribe. And while you're down there in the bottom right hand corner, there should be a notification bell to keep you guys posted of what I get up to. So without further ado, guys, thanks for support, thanks for watching, do what you love what you do. Until next time, Aspie signing out, and I'll see you all again soon. Ciao.